Thank you for joining me at Remote-Backroad-Jungles with a dash in between each word. And today I'm going to do a video on Dudleytown. You may or may not have heard of it, but supposedly some people say it's the most haunted place in the United States. And I'm not saying it's haunted or it's not. You judge for yourself. So I'm just going to get right into this. And as always, I'm going to be using my notes, so please listen carefully, and in the comments if I make a mistake or if you have other info to give, please let me know, because I always do stories that I can document, and also stories that really interest me or that are kind of like rare occurrences, mysterious places. So I really enjoy this, and I hope you do too. Dudleytown is located in the county of Litchfield, Connecticut. It has a notorious history of suicides, ghost sightings, unexplained disappearances. Because of these supposed ghost sightings, there has been many trespassers and vandalism in this area, and so the people who actually live there, they don't appreciate people coming. So in, like, I think it was up until the 90s, it was actually still people could come in and they could kind of explore, and now they don't. It's not that way anymore. So the original settlement was started within the Cornwall area. The actual area of Dudleytown was first settled by Thomas Griffiths in 1740. Most accounts say it's located in a valley area that was hard to farm. Some ruins of the first settlement still stand, but there really aren't any more recent pics other than things that have already been for years, so who knows what the ruins still look like even now. Because the people of Dudleytown dislike the outsiders, and nobody's really allowed inside, we don't really have any recent stuff. Now, the valley where Dudleytown is located, the area that leads right into the village area, is called Dark Entry Forest, and it's called Dark Entry for a reason. The tree canopy is so thick, and the angle of the valley, that people that have been there say that Dark Entry, at noon, it can go completely pitch black. It doesn't, it's not like a regular spot. It's in between three hills. It just, the entire area is just covered at a certain point in time. So there are times during the day that it can go completely pitch black, which just adds to the much eeriness of this whole story. Before Dark Entry became closed off to thrill seekers and all these different people, many people would come to visit, and there were reports of some people just bursting into tears when they came near the forest because they had that eerie feeling. There's so many different stories to this, and how the cops really did not like to have to go in and get you. They themselves were creeped out. They do not like to go in there. So many people say you don't even hear animal noises. It hits a certain point and you don't hear the animals, you don't hear the crickets chirping, you don't really hear anything, and that's something that really scares people when they go there. Obviously, still people they trespass or they try and get as far as they can, but it doesn't change the fact that people, no matter how far they get, they're still very scared, and you can see it in the videos online. That's definitely something that I've noticed. Now, the whole idea of a curse being on the town dates back to a certain Edmund Dudley, an English nobleman beheaded for treason under Henry. So he's under one of the Henrys, and others have said it goes back to some of the ancestors being avid practitioners of witchcraft, which actually I could believe that more than some of the other things that I'm about to say, specifically because even to this day, how close they keep the town. To me, it's not just trying to conserve the wildlife, it's trying to hide something, or maybe it's a government project, but it sounds kind of suspicious. The people there the land used to be a sacred ground to the Mohawks. So this kind of starts reminding me of like Amityville Horror, where they said that house used to be where the Indians kept the mentally unstable and all these different problems. But the Indians housed what they thought were the mentally unstable, but who knows what was really happening? Who knows what part of history that really is, and how accurate any of the stuff is that I'm going to say. These are documented, but because there are such few families that actually lived there, who's the one who actually wrote the records and who took them? So, it has to be by your own judgment. So there were a lot of crop failures. This is what it's known for: mental illness, extreme mental illness, and some violent deaths. And some people even chalked it up to that there was, I believe they said something about mercury being around that area, and certain plants that were in the area that they believed could cause some of these sicknesses and sudden deaths and mental illness. Now, then they made the movie The Blair Witch Project, obviously in more recent times, about a haunted forest This prompted a resurgence of renewed interest in places like Dudleytown, and Dan Aykroyd actually called Dark Entry the most haunted place on Earth. So whatever his story is, but the fact that they made that movie is what also brought this whole thing up once again. The society that owns the land claims they are committed to promote forestation, to run a wood mill, promote conservation of bird, animal, wildlife, and flower life, and to afford a playground for us and our children's children. That's how they put it. In the 1930s, New York's Skedeverin Club spent some of the winters skiing on some homemade trails and spent summers canoeing down the Housatonic River. They also had horseback riding for children. So at one time, there was like a nice aura to this place, supposedly at one time, where there wasn't complaints. There are different times in history where you'll see these complaints pick up, whether it's new sensationalism, whether something really happened and people tried to cover it up. You'll start seeing this as I read on. Thomas Griffiths was the first to settle in the Dudleytown region in the early 1740s. He owned half the land, and a few years later Gideon Dudley arrived, and then two of Gideon's brothers came over. Around 1510 is when Edmund Dudley was beheaded for trying to overthrow King Henry. So since then, supposedly a curse fell on the family, and whether you believe it or not, the events to come, a list of very unfortunate events, will make you think, like, what happened? If there's no curse, what exactly happened? And I'm not saying there's a curse. I'm saying that there's something seriously wrong, probably with the people and the area. No one can deny these string of unfortunate events actually lead up to even more unfortunate events until present day, when they just shut everything basically down, and only the people who still own a little bit of that land are there. Like, no outsiders come in. So John Dudley, Edmund's son, attempted to control the British monarchy by arranging his son Guilford to marry Lady Jane Grey. That was the next in line for the crown. So she was next in line, but then Edward VI dies and Lady Jane rose to queen, but the plan fails and Lady Jane and two of the Dudleys were executed. Not looking good for the Dudleys. Then Guilford's brother came home from France as a military officer and brought a plague that quickly spread through the ranks, wiping out vast amounts of the military and then spreading through the country, killing thousands of people. Now, it's also important to note that a lot of these things that happened to them were things that would happen to anybody in a lot of ways during that time period. It just kind of seems like they have a string of bad luck, but it also seems like they're very conquering people, so to speak, in a way. They're very like, they all their ancestors really traveled here or traveled there. Maybe they're a well-traveled family, maybe not. But the point is that their family seems, everywhere they went, it does kind of seem like the curse, as some people called it, even traveled to them when they went to new different places. They just had bad fortune. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, left England and settled in the New World, a descendant of Robert's. William settled in Guilford, Connecticut. Then three of William's descendants, named Barzillai, Gideon, and Abiel, bought land in Cornwall. Robert Dudley had two sons, and one of them died in childhood. The other went to Italy, had children, and they all remained in Italy. Now, in 1747, Gideon Dudley bought a plot of land from Griffiths. Years later, Gideon's brothers Abiel and Barzillai purchased nearby land. Then Martin Dudley comes along from a different line of the family and moved there and married Gideon's daughter. So who knows about that? They're claiming it's a different line of the family, and I know people did some things back then, but it's the same family, and he's marrying the daughter. So Dudleytown rested isolated in the middle of three large hills. This is very important to remember so you can get a visual of how this place actually was. It's in a valley, but there's three huge hills. It's extremely isolated. The terrain is extremely rough. It's extremely hard to farm there, and that's what eventually kills them off in so many different ways. And it was said, like I said earlier, that it could be dark at noon. So this seems to be documented by, numerous people, and how dark it can get would also indicate that these people would have to either have some sort of a little bit mental toughness, that this wouldn't bother them. Like, who would even settle in an area like this? And when you see this over and over again, you might say something about the people that live there. The numerous other families began to trickle in: the Tanners, the Joneses, the Pattersons, the Dibleys, the Porters. Iron was also discovered nearby, and this actually helped to boost their area, you know, money for their area, and maybe wanting to get some people to come in. Aside from all of this, though, strangely, there was never any schools or churches, stores, etc. So they had to go outside to purchase supplies, and now this is reminding me of the village. Okay, now I heard different things. Somebody also said that there were some, maybe they didn't have a cemetery, maybe they didn't have like a church, but they had form of some form of civilization. But it almost seems like these people wanted to be secluded, but then they have to go outside to get all these different things. So you would think to a certain degree they are not so isolated, and you would think they would mix with other people. And even if it does get dark at noon, you would think, okay, but these people are still interacting with other people. It would be really interesting to know the records of other people around the surrounding area of Dudleytown and see if they ever thought there was anything weird, or is there any weird occurrences with those people that interacted with the people from Dudleytown. So when somebody died, there was no cemetery. So I find that strange as well. And I've heard a lot of people comment, or I should say some people comment, that there was a cemetery around that area, but they don't know how old it is. Because don't forget, people do videos now, people explore now, and some of the things that are there now weren't the things that were there originally in the original civilization that was a long time back. So according to an 1854 map, the highest number of families that ever lived there peaked at 26 families. So they might have even had really big families, but still, that's not that much, but it's a fair area that you could kind of be happy, I guess. There would be enough people to talk to, but they were spread out. And the fact that there's only 26 families, and then the strange things that happen to them, it just seems weirder and weirder as time goes on. At one time, the town did make timber, and it was used to make wood coal for Litchfield County's iron furnaces in Cornwall and other neighboring towns. But later the furnaces moved and lumber was no longer needed. So at one point in time there were 3 water-powered mills in Dudleytown, but as time goes on, everything kind of dies out because they didn't need the furnaces. They didn't need the wood coal that they were making. So it's kind of just like, you're still wondering the entire time we're talking about this, you're still wondering what would make somebody settle in this area? For what purpose would you settle in this area that you can't even do good farming? 3 Dudleys moved out and died of natural causes later in life, and Abiel Dudley remained, lost his fortune, and went insane, later losing his property and becoming a lord of the town. So it sounds like the three that got out lived a fair life. So it sounds like everybody who kind of stays there, and the more they become associated with it, the more that they kind of have bad fortune. And it's also important to note too that sure, a lot of these things happened to people back then anyway. So you know, you kind of have to weigh in, is it just the area, is it just these weird people that are drawn to this area, whatever the case may be, or is a lot of this just very hard, a hard life that the average person back then would just live all the time. In 1792, Gershon Hollister, friend of Abiel, was killed while building a barn at William Tanner's place. Some have speculated that about it being a suspicious death, and I actually heard one thing to do with like an axe murder. So I mean, there are different stories, and I'm not exactly sure who has the most accurate information, but I will throw everything out there specifically because I don't believe leaving anything out, because I think the details are very important. I think present day they're kind of trying to clean up certain things maybe to make the town sound a little bit better. Tanner went insane but lived to 104, and they did say a few of the people that went insane might have had senility. So because of that, maybe they weren't insane the way we would think of it. But Tanner told fellow villagers, and this is a common theme among many people, that there were forest people that were out to get him, and that they would come at midnight and, you know, out. And he's not the only one who said this. Now, the Nathaniel Carter family that moved there in 1759 inhabited Abiel Dudley's old house. And then a plague hit the village and killed the Adoniram Carter family and some relatives of Nathaniel. So it just seems like one bad thing after another after another. These people have it rough. They ended up moving to New York in 1763. The Carters moved to Delaware, Indian Territory. So this is something that, okay, they moved into Indian Territory. What do you expect? In an Indian attack, Nathaniel, his wife, and infant child were butchered. The Carters' other 3 children were taken to Canada. 2 daughters were ransomed. David remains with the Indians, married an Indian girl, came to the U.S. for an education, helped edit a newspaper, and became a justice of the Supreme Court. So not everybody necessarily died a horrific way. Not everybody was unsuccessful. Actually, some people had great success and really made it in life. So, draw your own conclusions. General Herman Swift, who had served under Washington, his wife Sarah Fay was struck by lightning on the front porch of their home and killed. The general, he went insane. The famous Horace Greeley was also involved in the sad state of affairs. He married a young Mary Young Cheney. That was her name. Mary was involved in a wellness movement involved with vegetarianism. Mary eventually died from lung disease in New York City, but some legends stated she committed suicide. And Horace Greeley, he died 1 month later. Regardless of what this legend is, he did die 1 month later. Post-Civil War, many of the inhabitants died and some moved away. The town had areas of elevation that were more than 1,500 feet. So if you can imagine that, and you can imagine what it would be good for farming, the amount of sunlight, it's in hilly country, it's hard to farm, it can go pitch black at noon when they need it. Obviously, it seems like this whole atmosphere was not so good. So why somebody would want to live in what they describe as a lot of it was just swampy land makes you wonder, for what purpose were these people even there? One of the last residents of the town was John Patrick Brophy. His wife died of consumption. Now, this story was one of the weirdest occurrences of the village. His 2 children had been accused of stealing sleigh blankets. Who knows if this was like a good family and good social standing or whatever, but this is how the story goes. And after their mother's funeral, they both disappeared into the forest, never to be seen again. Some people say, okay, well, they stole these blankets, but these are little kids, and it's like, why would you steal these blankets and disappear into the forest? Then again, shortly after that, the Brophy's house burned down, and in an unexplained fire, Patrick Brophy disappeared into the forest and was never seen again. So first his 2 kids, then his house burns down, then he goes missing. Really weird. By the 1900s, and of course all you have to go on is the people who lived there, the records, what they wrote. By the 1900s, the town was completely deserted, and now here comes one of the most famous stories associated with Dudleytown and Dark Entry Forest. Around that same time, Dr. William Clark bought 1,000 acres of land, and this is just very interesting, so listen carefully, some of which included Dudleytown. It sounds like he bought some of the surrounding area as well. He made a vacation home. The doctor and Harriet, his wife, visited on the weekends until completion, and they seemed to be pretty happy, according to everything that I read up until that time. Then one weekend, Dr. Clark gets called away to an emergency in New York, and his wife stayed behind. Why he left her behind when things were at this point in time, there's a whole history to the place. Who knows? But it's weird. Some people have speculated, how did they even get word to him that there was an emergency? How did he know there was an emergency when it was so hard just to get a messenger in there in the first place? I don't think people were so tight-knit back then in this particular town, meaning like that no outsiders could come in. They make no mention of that. It's only present day now because we live in modern times and there's a bunch of thrill seekers. So it seems like you could get to these people if you needed to. It's just people speculate on who brought him this news. So he goes and he returns 36 hours later. His wife had gone completely insane. She was screaming. She was upstairs. He was afraid. Her mouth was gaping open. She was laughing. She was scared. She spoke of strange creatures that came out of the forest and attacked her. Some accounts say Mrs. Clark eventually committed suicide. Dr. Clark actually returned to his house where his wife was shrieking in madness. And this somehow, whether he was grief-stricken, but he tells his story, and I've even heard of some accounts where there was wood left on the stairs where she was gathering wood, like if she went outside to get some wood and then she saw something in the woods, multiple things which they said pulled at her clothes, but you couldn't see anything. It almost sounds demonic, right? And this is what many people have spoken of, even present day, but nobody can get any real proof because you don't see anything. They just see something. So, but yet Dr. Clark decided to maintain his house even after this and revisit and remarry. He eventually remarried and stayed until another larger house was built in 1930, and it was even larger. And it was in 1924 when the Dark Entry Forest Association, this is the association that owns this place to this day, was formed so that the land around Dudleytown would remain forever wild. I wonder why they would want to do that. Dr. Clark died in 1943 and Carita passed away 5 years later. Many of their family members, though, are still there and reside in that general area. There's an area not far called Bald Mountain Road, secluded from the main roads, still there to this day, and some of the closest residents live there today. Now, the thrill seekers still try very hard to get in, and I myself have watched many videos on this, but the curious thrill seekers only they only go so far, and you can tell that they seem to be unnerved and unsettled a bit. And then there's some other people, you come in, there's kind of like some weird people, you can tell that they're like gothic. Then there's these other people that are like, you know, just regular people, supposedly there's kids, whatever. And you can tell every person, some of them come in a group, other of them come like one kid, two kid, one person by themselves. But they always seem like they're kind of like the oddballs that take the chance, risk takers. But also it seems like you could see that they seem a little bit unnerved. There's something about this particular story, not like other ones. There's always thrill seekers in every story, but it seems like these people in particular, there's something about it that kind of unnerves them a little bit. And police do patrol this area, and security, and I've seen some of the videos, I've done enough research on this that they will kick you out and they will find you. They will fine you, they will also find you, and sometimes they've let people go, but other people I'm sure probably have been fined. I would need to look into that more, but people over there take it really seriously. They do not like, it is private property. You would be trespassing, but they don't like it, especially because of the way that, I guess, the association of it being like a place of like bad memories. They don't like that reputation. So these people, I'm just a little bit surprised that they're not that adventurous, that they don't try another route and cut off a certain way so that they don't keep ending up, you know, in the same spot where the patrols are waiting. It's almost like if they don't want to go any further because they're scared. Every video I've watched, it always seems like they didn't have enough gumption to keep going. Not saying to trespass on private property, but I'm saying out of all the other places that people trespass, I just find it odd that I haven't seen too many people have that like get up and go to try this place. I almost feel like people are really, it bothers them a little bit about this area. So I also think some of the people, some of the fear running into the residents that do live there, it might be basically the people that live there, they fear that for a bad reputation for their little community, but maybe they are devil worshippers. Maybe they're the you know, long lost relatives of them. Who knows? You let me know in the comments. Thank you for joining me, and I'd also like to know if you have any other information about this particular incident. My channel is Remote-Backroad-Jungles with a dash in between each word, and my link is www.youtube.com/@hiddenoasis-secret pathfinder. And thank you for joining me, and come again next time.